Look
The
at her, so
humiliated and
weak.
called wife who just put to bed ugly in a party with friends, but she made him regret. Look at her, fat, ugly, and useless. Who would want to touch that thing after childbirth? Those were the venomous words her husband spat at a party, his friends roaring with laughter as he pointed at the wife who had only just given him a child. Weak from delivery, her body still healing, she stood there as his mockery turned her joy into shame. But sometimes the very moments meant to break, you awaken a strength no one expects. Because that night, she made a choice that turned his laughter into silence and his pride into ashes of regret. This is the story of a new mother mocked, humiliated, and betrayed until she rose in a way that left the world stunned. And today, it is being retold by me. Hello, family, welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request, please. Subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together, we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. The lights of Richard's mansion glowed like a crown that evening. Music filled the air, laughter spilled from the open doors, and the clinking of glasses carried the sound of success. Richard Benson, the man of the hour, stood tall in the center of it all, a wealthy businessman, admired and envied in equal measure. To the guests, he was charming, confident, and powerful. But behind his smile was a coldness only his wife knew. Emily stood near the staircase, hands gently folded over her midsection. It had been only 6 weeks since she had given birth to their first child. Her body was still healing, her heart still tender. The long nights of caring for a newborn had left her tired, yet she had chosen to come. She wanted to show Richard support, to stand by him as the wife who loved him. She had hoped for kindness, maybe even a word of appreciation for carrying his child. Instead, she was about to taste humiliation. "Emily!" Richard's booming voice called across the room. All eyes turned toward her. She froze for a second, startled, then forced a smile as she walked slowly toward him. Richard's arm was slung casually around the shoulders of Sophie, his young assistant, dressed in a shimmering red gown that drew stares from every man in the room. "Come on, sweetheart," Richard said, waving a glass of wine. "Let everyone see my wife." The proud mother of my son Emily smiled weakly. "Good evening, everyone," she murmured, her voice soft. But Richard wasn't done. His grin widened, and his words grew sharp. "Look at her," he said loudly, pointing toward Emily's body. "Fat, swollen, and walking like she's carrying a sack of bricks. 6 weeks ago, she gave birth, and she still looks like this." A wave of laughter erupted around him. Some guests covered their mouths, pretending to cough, while others chuckled openly. Emily's face turned pale. Her hands trembled at her sides. Richard's friend, Martin, smirked and said, "Man, you weren't lying. She looks different. Guess some women just let themselves go after childbirth." "Different," Richard barked. "She looks like a whale that washed up on my front lawn." Laughter roared louder, glasses clinked. Sophie pressed her lips together, feigning sympathy, but her eyes glittered with satisfaction. Emily swallowed hard. She wanted the ground to open and swallow her whole. She wanted to run upstairs, close the door, and hide with her baby. But she stood frozen, because walking away would mean giving them more reason to laugh. Her chest burned as tears pressed behind her eyes. One of the older women at the party leaned toward her friend and whispered, not softly enough, "She doesn't fit his world. Look at her clothes. So plain. She was never meant for this life." The words cut deep. Emily clenched her hands together, nails digging into her palms to stop herself from crying in front of them. Richard wasn't finished. He lifted his glass and said, "Gentlemen, you see what I have to deal with. I bring in the money, I throw the parties, I shine, and what do I get at home? This baggage. Tell me, who would want to touch that thing after childbirth? The room went silent for a moment. The cruelty was sharp, almost shocking. But then, as if on cue, the laughter returned, harsher this time. Emily's lips parted slightly, but no words came. Her throat was dry. She turned to Richard, searching for even a flicker of mercy in his eyes. There was none. "Richard," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Why are you doing this?" He leaned closer, his smile still plastered on. "Because it's true," he muttered under his breath, low enough for only her to hear. "And maybe you'll finally realize you're not enough." Her heart cracked. Sophie slipped her arm around Richard's waist and laughed softly, drawing attention back to herself. "Oh, come on, Mr. Benson. Don't be so harsh. Emily looks fine. She just needs a little time to get back in shape." Richard chuckled, kissed the top of Sophie's hair, and replied loudly, "That's why I keep you around, Sophie. You remind me what a real woman should look like." The room erupted again. Emily turned away, unable to watch anymore. Her vision blurred with tears. She made her way back to the staircase, each step heavier than the last. The laughter still echoed behind her, haunting every movement. At the top of the stairs, she paused. She wanted to scream, to throw a glass, to demand respect. But her voice felt trapped. Instead, she pressed a hand against her chest and whispered to herself, "For my child, I will endure this." Downstairs, Richard raised another toast, his arm still around Sophie. To success, to beauty, and to living without regrets. Everyone cheered. And Emily, broken and humiliated, stood in the shadows, clutching her pain like a wound no one could see. The party dragged on late into the night. From upstairs, Emily could still hear the laughter and music floating through the house. Every burst of noise cut into her heart like a knife. She sat on the edge of the bed, rocking her newborn son gently in her arms. His tiny fingers wrapped around her thumb, his breaths soft and peaceful. For a moment, the world seemed bearable, because she had him. But even as she whispered to her child, her mind replayed Richard's words. Baggage, wail. Who would want to touch that thing? Tears streamed down her cheeks, dripping onto the baby's blanket. "Don't worry, little one," she whispered. "I'll protect you, even if I have to suffer. I'll protect you." She kissed his forehead and laid him gently in the crib. By midnight, the noise downstairs began to fade. Guests were leaving, voices trailing off, car doors slamming outside. Emily thought maybe Richard would finally come up, apologize and explain himself. She prayed he would. But curiosity pulled at her heart. Something told her not to wait quietly. She slipped on a robe, stepped out of the bedroom, and moved carefully down the staircase. The house smelled of wine and perfume, mixed with cigar smoke. Empty glasses and half-eaten food cluttered the tables, and then she heard voices, hushed but clear, coming from the study. She froze by the hallway door. Richard's deep voice carried through first. "Finally, they're gone. What a boring crowd. But at least they know who's in charge." Sophie's laughter followed, soft and playful. "You were the star, as always. I swear, Richard, you love the attention too much." Richard chuckled. "What's the point of success if no one's watching?" There was a pause. Then Sophie asked, "But what about Emily? Don't you think you went too far tonight?" She looked like she was about to break. Emily held her breath, pressing her ear closer to the doorframe. Richard snorted. "Break? She's already broken. That's the truth. I don't even know why I married her. She's baggage, Sophie." Dead weight. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. Sophie's voice softened, almost teasing. "So, do you regret it?" "Regret," Richard replied without hesitation. "Every damn day. My family warned me. I thought she'd change, that she'd grow into this world. But she's still the same poor plain girl. No class, no beauty, nothing. Emily's knees weakened. She gripped the wall to steady herself, her eyes wide with shock. Richard continued, his voice dripping with arrogance. You, Sophie, you're different. You're sharp, attractive. You belong here, in my world. Emily. She just got lucky. She gave me a son, and that's the only useful thing she's ever done. Emily covered her mouth, stifling a gasp. Inside the study, Sophie giggled nervously. Richard, you shouldn't say that. What if she hears you? Richard laughed bitterly. So what if she does? What's she going to do? Cry? She has no power, Sophie. Without me, she's nothing. Everyone knows it. Emily's vision blurred again, but this time it wasn't just pain. It was something darker. Anger stirred beneath the sorrow, a storm forming quietly inside her chest. Her husband, the man she had loved, the father of her child, had stripped her of every shred of dignity, first in front of strangers, and now behind closed doors. And Sophie, the woman she had trusted as just an assistant, was sitting there, letting it happen, encouraging it. Emily stepped back silently, her heart thundering, her hands trembling. She wanted to burst into the room, to scream, to throw every ugly word back in Richard's face. But she stopped herself. Instead, she turned and climbed the stairs, her steps heavy but controlled. She returned to the bedroom, shut the door softly, and leaned against it. In the crib, her baby stirred and whimpered. Emily rushed over, scooped him up, and held him close. She whispered into the night, her voice shaking but filled with a strange new resolve. They think I am nothing. They think I am weak. But they have no idea who I can become. Her tears dried on her cheeks. Her arms tightened around her child. Tonight they laughed. Tomorrow, Richard will regret every word. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give future to children and women abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing to hitting the subscribe button and turning on your notification bell. Also, let us know in the comments where you are watching us from and how this story hit home for you. The morning after the party, the mansion felt empty but heavy. Empty glasses still sat on tables, and the faint smell of alcohol lingered in the air. Emily stood by the window staring at the garden below. Her body still ached from childbirth, her eyes burned from crying all night. The words Richard had spoken kept echoing in her head. Baggage, dead weight, regret. She wanted to believe she had misheard him, but deep down she knew the truth. When Richard finally came downstairs, freshly showered and dressed in a crisp suit, Emily gathered the courage to speak. She needed answers. Richard, she began softly, her hands trembling. Can we talk? About last night. He looked at her briefly, then poured himself a cup of coffee as if she were invisible. Talk about what? He said flatly. Emily swallowed hard. About the things you said, in front of your friends. About me, Richard smirked. Oh, that. Don't take it so seriously, Emily. It was just a joke. A joke? Her voice cracked. You called me ugly, useless. You laughed at me while everyone joined in. That wasn't a joke, Richard. That was cruel. He set down his cup and turned to face her, his eyes cold. Cruel? You want to talk about cruel? Cruel is me being stuck with a woman who trapped me with a baby. Emily's breath caught. Trapped you? Richard, I gave you a son. I thought that was what you wanted. Richard's tone grew sharper. What I wanted was freedom. What I wanted was a partner who could stand beside me, not drag me down. Look at you, Emily. Look at yourself. Do you think you fit in this life? In this house? With these people? Her lips trembled. I've done everything to support you. I left my own career. I followed you. He cut her off with a bitter laugh. Exactly. You left your small, pathetic life behind because you wanted to marry up. Don't act like you did me a favor. You needed me. You were nothing before me, and without me, you'll be nothing again." Emily staggered back a step. His words were knives, slicing her open one by one. "Richard," she whispered, "do you even love me anymore?" He stared at her for a long moment, then shrugged casually. "Love? Don't be naive. Love doesn't build empires, money, power, image. That's what matters. And right now you're none of those things." The baby's cry from upstairs broke the silence, but Richard didn't even flinch. He picked up his coffee, smoothed his tie, and walked toward the door. "I have a meeting. Don't wait up for me." "Richard!" Emily called out, her voice shaking. "You can't just walk away after saying those things. We have a child together. We're supposed to be a family." He turned at the door, his smile cruel. "Family? Don't fool yourself. My family never wanted you. They saw through you from the start. My mother told me not to marry you. She said you'd only bring shame. I should have listened. With that..." He slammed the door behind him, leaving Emily shattered in the silence. That afternoon, Emily tried to calm herself by taking a walk around the estate. She needed air, needed to think. But as she passed by the open terrace, she froze. Voices drifted through the air. Richard's voice, Sophie's laugh. She stepped closer, heart pounding. "Don't worry," Richard was saying. "Everything will be ours soon. She's too weak to fight back. Once the papers are ready, I'll take the house, the business shares, everything. Emily will walk away with nothing." Sophie giggled. "Are you sure she won't resist?" "She might surprise you." Richard's laugh was full of contempt. "Resist? Emily doesn't have the guts. She's a shadow. That woman can barely look me in the eye, let alone stand against me." Emily pressed her back against the wall, tears streaming silently down her face. When Sophie left, Richard's mother, Margaret, appeared on the terrace. Emily's heart raced. She had always believed Margaret tolerated her, maybe even cared for her. But now she listened. "Richard," Margaret said in a low voice, "you must act quickly. The longer you keep her, the more she'll cling to that child. End it before she starts imagining she has rights." Richard nodded. "Don't worry, Mother. The lawyer is already preparing the documents. Once I get her signature, she's out. She'll have no claim to the house or the company." Margaret's lips curved into a satisfied smile. "Good. That girl was never good enough for you. I warned you, but you wouldn't listen. She's poor blood, Richard. Weak. You deserve better. Sophie is a smarter match. She knows how to play the game." Emily's chest tightened so hard she thought she would faint. Her mother-in-law, the woman she had once trusted, was helping destroy her. Emily stumbled back from the terrace, her knees weak. She pressed her hand over her mouth to stop the sob threatening to escape. It wasn't just Richard. His mother was part of it. The very woman who had once smiled at her during family dinners, who had held her child with warm hands and whispered, "He's my little prince." It had all been a mask. She hurried upstairs to her room, locked the door, and collapsed onto the floor. The walls spun around her. They want me gone. They want to strip me of everything, my marriage, my home, even my child. The thought sent a cold shiver down her spine. Hours later, she heard the front door open. Richard was back. She wiped her face, stood up, and waited. If she didn't confront him now, she would never find the courage again. When he entered the room, she stepped forward. "Richard, we need to talk. I heard you, on the terrace, you and your mother, and Sophie." He froze for a moment, then gave a slow, mocking smile. "So, the little mouse can listen after all." Her voice trembled. "You're planning to divorce me? To take everything from me?" He walked closer, his footsteps heavy on the floor. "Planning? No, Emily. Deciding. You've outlived your purpose. I gave you this house, this life. I made you Mrs. Benson. And now, you're an embarrassment. Tears welled in her eyes. I gave you a son, Richard. How can you talk like this? He deserves a family. He deserves love. Richard's face hardened. Don't use him as your shield. That boy is my heir, not yours. You carried him, yes, but I'll raise him, with Sophie by my side. She's the kind of woman who fits this life. Emily's breath caught in her throat. You can't mean that. You can't take my child from me. Richard leaned in close, his voice like poison. Watch me. The next morning, Margaret paid Emily a visit in her bedroom. She closed the door behind her and gave Emily a long, cold look. You should make this easy, dear, Margaret said smoothly. Sign whatever Richard gives you. Walk away quietly. Don't embarrass yourself further. Emily swallowed hard. You want me to leave my son? To walk away like I'm nothing? Margaret's eyes narrowed. What are you, Emily? Look at yourself. You don't belong here. You never did. You're from dirt, from nothing. My son elevated you, and you failed to rise to his level. You're weak, pathetic. You can't even keep his attention. Emily clenched her fists. I may not have money, but I have dignity. I loved your son when no one else stood beside him. Does that mean nothing to you? Margaret chuckled coldly. Love? Love doesn't keep a man. Power does. Money does. And you have neither. She leaned closer, her voice sharp as a blade. If you stay, you'll only ruin that child's future. Let us raise him properly. With Sophie as his mother, he will grow strong, not soft like you. Emily gasped. You would replace me with her? She's just his mistress. Margaret straightened her pearl necklace, unbothered. Mistress or not, she's better suited than you ever were. When Margaret left, Emily collapsed onto the bed. Her body shook with rage and grief. She stared at the crib where her son slept, his tiny chest rising and falling peacefully. For the first time, she realized how truly alone she was. Her husband despised her. His mother wanted her erased. And Sophie was already taking her place. Emily pressed her hand to her heart, whispering through clenched teeth. They think I am powerless. They think I will walk away, but they don't know me. They don't know what I can do. She kissed her son's forehead, her voice steadying. For you, my child, I will fight. I will not let them take everything from me. Meanwhile, downstairs, Richard poured himself another drink as Margaret sat across from him. Soon, mother, he said, smirking. She'll break. She'll sign. And then she's gone. Margaret sipped her tea calmly. Good. Do not show mercy, Richard. Mercy is for equals, and she is beneath you. Remember that Richard raised his glass. To a new life. With Sophie. Without baggage. They clinked glasses, their faces hard with triumph, unaware that upstairs a broken woman had just found the first spark of her hidden strength. The whispers started slowly like a faint breeze and then spread like wildfire through the wealthy circles Emily once thought she had entered. She doesn't cook. She doesn't clean. She does nothing but sit at home. I heard she leaves the baby with nannies while she sleeps all day. Poor Richard. Imagine working so hard and coming home to a lazy, ungrateful wife. Emily heard the words at the market, at the salon, even in the church pews. Women who had once greeted her with polite smiles now turned their backs. Men she had known through Richard's business partners looked at her with disdain. At first she told herself it was just gossip, the kind that floats around in high society. But the words were too sharp, too specific, too rehearsed. She began to see the truth. The rumors were planted. By Sophie. By Margaret. And Richard allowed it. One afternoon, Emily ran into her old friend Claire at a cafe. She rushed to her, desperate for a kind face. Claire, Emily said softly. It's good to see you. How have you been? Claire hesitated. She glanced around the room, then leaned closer. Emily, people are talking. They say you're not adjusting well, that you've let yourself go, that you don't support Richard the way a wife should. Emily's eyes burned. You believe that? Claire sighed, her voice heavy with pity. I don't know what to believe. I don't want to get caught in the middle. And just like that, Claire excused herself, leaving Emily sitting alone with her untouched cup of tea. Emily stared down at the table, her hands trembling. Even her friends were slipping away. At home, things only grew worse. Richard barely spoke to her except to criticize. Margaret stopped pretending altogether and openly sneered at her. Sophie visited often, flaunting her beauty in front of Emily like a silent threat. One night, as Emily passed by Richard's office, she heard his voice, low, angry, but commanding. I don't care what you have to do. Move the numbers. Make it look clean. If the board asks questions, they'll get the answers I give them. Understand? Emily paused. His tone was sharp, almost desperate. She pressed her ear closer to the door. Richard's voice again. No one can find out about the transfers. If they do, it's over, and I don't plan on losing everything because of some paperwork mistake. Her heart pounded. Transfers. Over. The next day, while Richard was out, she slipped into his office. She hadn't dared before, but now, desperation guided her hands. She opened drawers, files, and folders, carefully scanning. And then she saw it. Documents, bank statements, numbers that didn't add up. Money being moved in and out of shell accounts. Funds missing from the company's main account. Her fingers trembled as she copied the papers, slipping them into a folder she hid in her closet. Richard's empire wasn't built on brilliance. It was built on fraud. That night, lying awake beside her husband, Emily whispered into the dark, God, show me what to do. And slowly, something began to shift inside her. She started small. Early mornings, she went for quiet walks around the estate, letting her body heal, rebuilding her strength. She began eating better, caring for her skin, tending to her appearance, not for Richard, not for anyone else, but for herself. She found the number of an old mentor, Mr. Dawson, who had once guided her when she was a young intern before marrying Richard. She called him in secret. Emily Benson, he said in surprise. It's been years. How are you? Her voice wavered. Not well, but I need your advice. I need direction. Mr. Dawson didn't ask questions she wasn't ready to answer. Instead, he encouraged her to use her sharp mind again, to remember her own worth. You were one of the smartest young women I ever worked with, he reminded her. Don't let anyone bury that. Those words lit a spark in her heart. But Emily wasn't reckless. She knew Richard was dangerous. She started secretly recording conversations, snippets of his phone calls, his arguments with business partners, even moments when Sophie whispered schemes into his ear. She saved every recording, every document, carefully hidden in places Richard would never look. Piece by piece, she was building a wall of truth that could one day destroy him. Still, the loneliness cut deep. One evening, as she stood on the balcony with her son in her arms, she whispered, They've taken everything from me. Friends, respect, even your father's love. But I swear, they won't take you. And they won't take me down without a fight. Her baby gurgled softly, unaware of the storm brewing in his mother's heart. Then came the blow she didn't see coming. Late one night, she overheard Richard and Sophie again. They were in the study, their voices low but clear. Richard, Sophie whispered, I can't hide it much longer. You'll have to tell her Richard sighed. We'll tell her soon. But it doesn't matter. She'll be gone by then. Emily's heart raced as she leaned closer. Sophie's voice was trembling but excited. I'm carrying your child. Our child. And I won't let Emily stand in the way. Emily's stomach dropped. Her breath caught in her throat. Richard chuckled darkly. Don't worry, Sophie. Emily was just a phase, a mistake. You're my future. Once the divorce is final, she'll be out of the picture for good. Emily staggered back from the door, her hand over her mouth. Pregnant. Sophie is pregnant. The room around her seemed to spin. Her knees nearly buckled. Her husband wasn't just cheating. He wasn't just planning to destroy her. He was replacing her entirely. Emily stumbled back into her bedroom, her whole body shaking. She sat on the edge of the bed, clutching her chest, as though her heart might tear itself apart. Pregnant. Sophie was pregnant. The words circled in her head like vultures. She thought of Richard's laughter at the party, his cruel remarks, his secret meetings with Sophie. Now everything made sense. The boldness, the arrogance, the way he had stopped hiding their affair. Sophie wasn't just a fling. She was the replacement. Emily fell to her knees and wept silently, her sobs muffled against the bed sheets. "What did I do to deserve this?" she whispered to the empty room. "Why me?" The baby stirred in the crib beside her, whimpering. Emily reached over, lifted him, and pressed him to her chest. His warmth steadied her. His tiny fingers grasped her blouse, and she realized she couldn't break. Not now, not ever. "For you," she whispered into his hair, "I will survive this. I will fight." But survival was not easy. The next week, the rumors intensified. At a charity luncheon, women whispered loudly enough for her to hear. Her own husband barely looks at her. "Did you hear? She doesn't even nurse her baby. The nannies do everything. Richard deserves better." Poor man Emily sat stiffly at the table, forcing a polite smile while her insides twisted. She wanted to shout that it was all lies, that she loved her son more than anything. But her words would fall on deaf ears. The poison had already spread. When she returned home, she found Sophie in the living room, laughing with Margaret. Sophie had her hand resting on her stomach, a faint smile playing on her lips. Margaret glanced at Emily with disdain. "There you are. You look tired, as always." No wonder Richard is so drained. Emily's lips parted, but no words came. She turned and walked upstairs without a fight, her dignity the only shield she had left. That night, she sat by her closet, pulling out the folder where she had hidden the copied documents. She spread them across the floor: bank records, transfers, contracts with forged signatures. Each page was evidence of Richard's deceit. She whispered to herself, "He thinks I'm powerless. He thinks I'll walk away. But these papers, they're my weapon." Her phone buzzed with a message from her old mentor, Mr. Dawson. "Remember, Emily, power is not in shouting. It's in knowing the truth and waiting for the right moment." She stared at the message for a long time, then gathered the papers and carefully locked them away. For the first time in weeks, she felt something like control. In the days that followed, Emily became quieter, calmer, almost invisible. Richard took her silence as weakness, but inside she was watching everything, recording everything, preparing. She carried a small recorder hidden in her bag. When Richard yelled at her over dinner, she let him rage and pressed the button. When Sophie whispered promises to him in dark corners, Emily captured every word. Bit by bit, she was building a wall of evidence so strong it could bury them both. One evening, Richard confronted her in the kitchen. "You're acting strange," he said, his eyes narrowing. "Quiet, distant. What are you planning, Emily?" She forced a tired smile. "Nothing, Richard. I'm just tired." He stepped closer, towering over her. "Good. Stay that way. Don't make this harder than it has to be." He patted her cheek condescendingly before walking out. Emily waited until he was gone, then whispered, "You have no idea what's coming." But as strong as she tried to be, the truth about Sophie's pregnancy gnawed at her. Late at night, she would lie awake, staring at the ceiling. The thought of another woman bearing Richard's child, of her son growing up with a half-sibling raised by Sophie, made her stomach twist. One night, she couldn't hold it in anymore. She whispered into the dark, "God, I am broken." Everyone has turned against me, my husband, his mother, even my friends, and now, another child. Where is my place in this world? Her tears soaked the pillow, but then she looked at her son sleeping beside her and wiped her face. My place is here, she said firmly, beside him, protecting him. And one day, making them all regret what they've done. Downstairs, Richard poured Sophie a glass of wine, though she waved it away with a smile, resting her hand on her belly. She'll be gone soon, Richard assured her. The divorce will be quick. I've already spoken to the lawyer. Emily won't fight back. She doesn't have it in her. And once she signs, you'll be the lady of this house. Sophie leaned against him, her eyes shining. And our child will be the true heir. Richard smirked. Exactly. They clinked their glasses together, sealing the plan that would crush Emily. Or so they thought. Upstairs, Emily pressed her recorder off and tucked it safely away. She had captured every word. She stood at the window, the night air cool against her face, her son's soft breathing filling the room. Her heart was still broken, but beneath the cracks, something stronger was forming. They think I'm finished, she whispered. But I am just beginning. The Benson mansion glittered again, just like the last time. Expensive cars filled the driveway and the grand hall buzzed with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. Guests in their best attire moved from group to group, talking about business, gossiping about rivals, waiting for the big announcement Richard had promised. Richard stood in the center, beaming. Sophie clung to his arm in a golden dress that shimmered under the lights, her hand resting on her stomach as though reminding everyone of what she carried. Richard whispered something into her ear, and she giggled, leaning closer. Tonight, he said proudly, everything changes. The crowd quieted as Richard raised his glass. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Tonight is not just about business, but about life, about new beginnings. As many of you know, I believe in moving forward, in choosing what strengthens us, what elevates us. The doors opened. Every head turned. Emily walked in. For a heartbeat, the room froze. She wore a black gown, elegant and sharp, her hair styled to perfection, her presence undeniable. The whispers started immediately. Is that Emily? She looked so different. I thought she wasn't coming. Richard's smile faltered. Emily, he muttered. Emily walked slowly, her heels clicking against the marble. She stopped in the middle of the room, her chin lifted. Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm not late. The whispers grew louder. Richard forced a laugh, raising his glass again. Well, look who decided to crawl back. My wife. Though perhaps not for much longer. He turned to the guests. Yes, tonight is also about change. Emily and I are going our separate ways. Sometimes, gentlemen, you realize you need a partner who matches your world. He squeezed Sophie's hand. The crowd chuckled politely, but many glanced at Emily, waiting. Emily's voice cut through the noise. Yes, Richard. Life is about moving forward, but not on lies, not on betrayal, and not on theft. A ripple of confusion passed through the room. Richard stiffened. What are you talking about? Emily reached into her clutch and pulled out a recorder. She pressed play. Richard's voice filled the room. Emily doesn't have the guts. She's a shadow. That woman can barely look me in the eye, let alone stand against me. Sophie is my future. Emily was just a mistake. The guests gasped. Sophie froze. Richard's hand slipped from hers. Emily's eyes swept the room. That was Richard Benson, the same man who stood before you just now and talked about new beginnings. This is how he speaks of the woman who carried his child, who stood by him through everything. A murmur ran through the crowd. Richard's face flushed with anger. You dare bring private matters here? Pathetic. Do you think anyone cares about your whining? Emily's tone sharpened. This isn't just about me, Richard. It's about the truth. And the truth is, You betrayed not only me, but everyone in this room. Richard barked a laugh. And what truth would that be? Emily opened her clutch again and pulled out a folder. This truth. Documents showing years of embezzlement, stolen funds, fake contracts. Your empire isn't built on genius, Richard. It's built on fraud. The crowd erupted. Richard's business partner, Mr. Langston, pushed forward and grabbed a paper. His eyes scanned the numbers, his expression hardening. These signatures. Richard, this is fraud. Do you have any idea what this means for the company? Richard stammered. It's lies. She forged them. She's desperate. Emily's calm voice rose. Forged? Then perhaps the guests would like to hear this. She pressed play on another recording. Richard's voice again. Move the numbers. Make it look clean. If the board asks questions, they'll get the answers I give them. Understand? The hall exploded. Shouts, chairs scraping, men cursing. You lied to us. You've destroyed everything. We trusted you, Richard. Richard's face twisted with panic. He turned to Sophie. Say something. Tell them it's not true. But Sophie stepped back, shaking her head. You told me everything was clean. You swore it. Richard grabbed her arm. Shut up, Sophie. She yanked free, her voice shaking but loud enough for all to hear. You used me. You promised me a future. You said we'd be together, that I'd be the real wife. The room gasped. Sophie's hand went instinctively to her stomach. The whispers turned vicious. Emily's voice cut like glass. Yes, Sophie is carrying Richard's child. He promised her the world, just as he once promised me. But he forgot to mention one thing. Richard Benson only loves himself. Everyone else is disposable. Sophie's lip trembled, then fury overtook her. She slapped Richard across the face, the sound echoing through the hall. You liar, she screamed. The crowd roared with laughter and gasps. Richard stumbled, clutching his cheek. You, all of you. You don't understand. She's twisting everything. But no one listened. His allies turned their backs. His friends whispered curses. His mother, Margaret, stormed forward, her face flushed with rage. Emily, Margaret hissed, you dare humiliate my son like this, after everything he gave you. Emily turned to her, unflinching. What he gave me? He gave me shame. He gave me betrayal. And you, Margaret, you encouraged it. You wanted me gone because I wasn't good enough for your world. Well, tonight I leave this house not in shame, but in strength, and Richard leaves it in ruins. Gasps filled the air again. Margaret's mouth opened, but no words came. Emily raised the final papers high. Here are the legal documents. Richard's fraud has stripped him of control. The house, the company shares, the custody of my child, all mine. Richard Benson is finished. Richard lunged at her, wild with desperation. You witch! You'll regret this! Two of his former partners held him back. Stay down, Richard. You've ruined enough. Emily looked at him one last time, her voice quiet but firm. No, Richard. You're the one who will regret it. You mocked me, humiliated me, betrayed me. But tonight you stand exposed, and I walk away free. She turned. The crowd parted for her, their eyes following her in awe. Some whispered, she's incredible. Others muttered, she destroyed him. At the door, the nanny waited with her child. Emily took the baby in her arms, kissing his forehead softly. Let's go home, she whispered. Behind her, Richard's world collapsed. Sophie stormed out in tears. His partners shouted about lawsuits and jail. Guests laughed at the man who once laughed at Emily. Margaret sat in silence, her empire crumbling with her son's disgrace. Emily stepped into the night, her gown trailing behind her, her child safe in her arms. The same people who once mocked her now whispered her name with respect. Humiliation and betrayal had almost destroyed her, but patience, dignity and truth had turned her shame into strength. And the man who once spat, who would want to touch that thing, now stood broken, alone, and stripped of everything. Emily didn't look back. She didn't need to.